Interlude. Mars Ascending.
Heads up, coming through!
Tibia's wings rattled like little buzzsaws as she sped through the hive just under the ceiling. In tight places, the clearance was still not very high, and startled changelings jumped out of her way with yelps of surprise.
Sorry!
She'd shout over her shoulder without looking back.
Important message for King Thorax!
The young changeling had always been seen as a bit of a daredevil, and she was one of the fastest flyers in the hive. That had gotten her in trouble more than once since the Reformation, as well as gotten her a permanent flight ban while indoors. But where others had seen a safety hazard, Pharynx had seen the makings of a fine scout. The distance a regular patrol could cover in 3 days, she could cover in 1. That alone made her an asset to hive security if Pharynx had ever seen one. Halt! 2 guards, crossing their spears, denied her access to the throne room. King Thorax is in a meeting. No interruptions.
Oh, come on, guys!
Tibia said, pushing one forehoof against the weapons barring her way.
This is vitally important!
Like last week when you were convinced that we were being invaded by griffins and it turned out to just be a funny-shaped cloud formation?
Tibia stomped her hoof.
I'm not joking around here!
What's with all the shouting? The 2 guards snapped to attention, as did Tibia upon recognizing the voice.
Leader of Patrol's Pharynx!
Pharynx nodded at the 2 guards, indicating for them to stand at ease, then looked at his young protege.
Tibia, I've been told you were seen violating your no-flight rule.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, but...
Now, I understand what it's like to be young and wanting to test limits.
Pharynx began, reciting a speech he had carefully prepared for exactly such an occasion and privately detested. But he had promised to take responsibility for the young troublemaker when he'd taken her under his wing, so now it was time to be the responsible adult.
Look, Captain, I'll apologize, but speed was really...
But as protectors of the hive, it is our responsibility to be considerate of those around us.
He droned on relentlessly, trying to speed through the lecture as quickly as he could. He had elsewhere to be, after all.
We must set an example of...
Captain!
Tibia yelled, hovering off the ground to be on eye level with her superior.
I've seen the red shade!
Pharynx abruptly stopped in his lecture, suddenly all infractions forgiven and forgotten.
Where?
He asked, summoning a map with his magic. Tibia pointed confidently to several spots on the map.
3 separate locations?
She nodded in confirmation.
Come with me,
he said curtly as he stepped right into the throne room. Tibia followed as the guards made way, and she couldn't help but smirk at them as if to say, "That's right, I'm with him."
Ember, I give you my word, it's not a changeling.
Thorax was saying to the Dragon Lord who was pacing back up and down the room.
Well, it's not a dragon. A changeling, though, can look like anything.
She snorted a small cloud of ash.
This being that came out of nowhere has been brazenly violating our borders for the past 2 weeks. As well as ours,
Thorax pointed out.
Do you really think I'd be lying to you face to face about this?
He asked, the hurt in his voice evident.
No,
she replied after a pause, passing a weary claw over her face.
But my dragons are getting antsy. They think this could be a prelude to invasion. There's talk of hunting it down. Well, now, hold on. I agree that some kind of unknown being stalking the border between our 2 nations and refusing to identify itself to patrols is cause for concern. But aside from a few scares and broken trees, there haven't been any serious incidents. We can't assume it's hostile.
Brother!
Pharynx called out, not bothering with any formalities. Before Thorax could answer, Ember narrowed her eyes at him.
This is a closed session. This had better be important.
The shade was spotted at the Griffonian border.
Ember turned and let loose a particularly vile curse in Ancient Dragon.
Ruth, where?
Hoofbeak Pass.
Thorax drew in his breath sharply.
That's not good, I take it,
Ember observed.
Not only is it right on the border,
Pharynx explained in place of his rapidly paling brother.
it's got significance. It was the site of our final battle with the Griffins when Chrysalis was still in charge, and they still had a king. We utterly annihilated them back in the day. It's partly why Griffinstone is the garbage heap it is today.
Wonderful,
Ember grumbled, addressing Thorax again.
This situation was already annoying, but not unmanageable. At least Changelings and Dragons are on somewhat friendly terms, but with the Griffins involved, it's gonna be a mess. They have no love for either of us, and they'll think one or both of us are up to something.
Thorax tapped his hoofs together, a nervous habit Pharynx had observed in him even all the way back in their childhood.
Do we know anything else?
He finally brought himself to ask. Pharynx nodded.
Tibia has spotted it 3 times.
You've seen the red shade?
Ember blurted. Pharynx pushed her forward.
Go on. Tell them what you told me.
Before Tibia could even take a breath, Ember was almost in her face.
Where was it? What did it look like? What's it doing?
Tibia began, suddenly feeling very self-conscious in the face of a foreign leader.
I didn't really get a good look at it.
Ember growled, but Thorax laid a steadying hoof on her shoulder.
That's all right, Tibia. Just take it slow. Tell us everything you can.
Tibia nodded, grateful to be addressing her own, less intense ruler instead.
I spotted the red shade in 3 different locations. Darmok Hills, Serenity Valley, and Hookbeak Pass.
All sites of recent or ancient battles.
Pharynx added as his own observation, though if that held any significance was anybody's guess at this point.
And all heavily forested,
Tibia went on.
But I'd seen some broken trees earlier when I was sent to investigate other reports of sightings, so I followed those when I spotted similar patterns. They must have something to do with it, because the trail led me to the red shade without fail each time. I could spot it from above, but every time I came through the treetops it vanished. Magic?
Ember asked.
Could be a dread Malwarf,
Thorax offered.
It could have burrowed when it saw you coming.
Tibia shook her head.
No, it's definitely not a Malwarf. I'm sure of that at least. It was big though. Like, really big. Probably even bigger than a dread Malwarf. And it's strong. It snapped those trees like twigs. Have there been any reports of attacks? Not that I'm aware of. I've spoken to subtlings from the outlying hives who spotted the shade, but no one was hurt. They said that it definitely saw them, but moved on with heavy footsteps after only the briefest of moments each time. None of the encounters lasted long enough to get a good description, and it was always obscured by some kind of foliage. Some say they saw its eyes glowing red between the trees, though. I can't confirm that, but everything who saw it was almost scared out of their chitin. And from my own observations, I can say this. It's huge. It has shiny things like metal on its body, and the red seems to be a cloak of some kind.
The question is, what is it doing? And when it's done with the forests, will it start cutting swaths of destruction through hives?
Pharynx pointed out. The room was quiet for a moment as that sunk in. Then Tibia spoke again.
I think the red shade is looking for something. Or someone.